The great crystal vault of the apex Concord shimmered, holding the light of 1,000 worlds. Here, beneath the gaze of 1,000,000 years of history, the fate of a fledgling species was being decided. They were a young race, barely out of their cradle, their ships crude, their politics cruder. A simple relocation, the Concord called it. A routine matter of galactic administration. But what if the data was wrong? What if the quiet little world on the edge of nowhere wasn't quiet at all? What happens when a species forged in fire is told to kneel? The apex Concord was shocked when Earth attacked back. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to the channel. Your support fuels our journey into the void. All right, let's begin the story. The chamber hummed with the silent thoughts and whispered translations of 100 different species. Light from the system's triple suns refracted through the vaulted crystal ceiling, a kilometer-wide marvel of engineering, casting slow-moving rainbows across floating daises and tiered platforms of polished obsidian. This was the heart of the apex Concord, the center of power in the known galaxy for 10 millennia. Its authority was absolute, its wisdom unquestioned. On the central dais, High Counselor Valerius of the Ethel Imperium floated, his energy form a placid, shimmering blue that bespoke ancient calm and unshakable confidence. His voice, translated into thousands of languages simultaneously by the chamber's psychoacoustic field, was the sound of history itself, smooth and inexorable. "The motion is before us," he echoed, the words settling over the assembly like a shroud of inevitability. Resolution 7 Gamma. The classification and administration of the nascent civilization in the star system designated 61. Oriones, the species that calls itself human. A being of living stone on a lower tier, a grok from the core worlds, shifted, the grinding sound of his crystalline joints barely audible. Another, a creature of gas and light called a luminous, swirled restlessly in its containment field, its colors flickering with agitation. The matter was trivial, a footnote in the grand chronicle of the Concord, yet it had occupied the subcommittees for weeks, a persistent, annoying buzz. Arbitrator Calyx of the Cthar Dominion leaned forward, her elegant, insectoid form perched at the edge of her seat like a predator ready to strike. Her multifaceted eyes, 1,000 tiny, gleaming lenses, reflected the chamber's light with a cold, avaricious fire. Her species, the Cthar, were the enforcers and industrialists of the Concord. They built its fleets and stripped its worlds. And in System 61 Oriones, she saw opportunity. "High Counselor," she began, her voice a series of sharp, precise clicks that the translator smoothed into a purr of cold, irrefutable logic. "The analysis from our deep-range scouts is conclusive and has been verified by 3 independent agencies. The Terra system is an asset of unparalleled value. 3 gas giants, prime for isotope, 3 harvesting at a purity of 99.8%. An asteroid belt dense with iridium and platinum group metals, vital for our fleet construction. Their star's G-type energy output is exceptional, stable, long-lived, perfectly suited for a primary energy harvesting array." Her gaze swept the chamber, her mandibles clicking softly, a gesture of dominance, daring anyone to challenge her dominion's thorough assessment. The system's resources could fund the Concord's entire military and infrastructure budget for the next 500 cycles. It is inefficient to leave such a prize in the hands of primitives who do not comprehend its value. "And the natives?" a quiet voice asked from the lower tiers. The question was so soft it was almost lost in the chamber's vastness, a whisper against a storm. All eyes, sensors, and psychic feelers turned to Emissary Tar. He was a small, furry being from the Pelian Protectorate, his species having been inducted into the Concord only a century ago after a brief and entirely one-sided conflict. He was young, idealistic, and utterly out of his depth. He still believed the words carved into the chamber walls about justice, harmony, and the sanctity of life. Calyx made another clicking sound, this one of dismissal, a gesture of profound contempt that needed no translation. She gestured with a slender, chitinous arm, and a holographic display of a lush, green world shimmering into existence. Bess eyed her. The world orbited a distant, placid red dwarf, its light weak and its system barren. "The natives are a class 7 civilization, Emissary, she stated, as if reading a death sentence. They will be moved. Standard relocation protocols will be followed, with all due consideration for their primitive state. A Class M world, Pelios 4, has been selected on the outer rim. Simple atmosphere. Basic, non-sentient life forms. A perfect reservation for a species at their stage of development. Tar stood, his small frame trembling slightly, but his voice was surprisingly firm as it echoed in the sudden quiet. But it is their homeworld, their place of origin, their crucible of evolution. The Concordian Charter, Article 4, Section B, explicitly protects the rights of sentient species to their ancestral planets. We invoked that same article when the Dominion sought to strip mine our moons. It is the bedrock of our shared laws. High Counselor Valerius pulsed with a soft, dismissive violet light, the color of regal impatience. Their sentience is debatable, emissary. Their development has been chaotic and violent. We have monitored them for nearly a full century. They have detonated over 2,000 fission devices on their own planet in acts of war and testing. They still wage war over trivial matters of resources, ideology, and what they call national pride. They poison their own biosphere in pursuit of trivial energy sources. His voice grew colder, dropping in pitch until it was the sound of a glacier grinding stone. They are children, unruly, dangerous children playing with fission-based toys. Our scouts confirm their most powerful weapons barely reach a 10-kiloton yield. They are a potential threat only to themselves. To allow such a volatile species to control a system so vital, so rich, would be an abdication of our sacred responsibility to galactic stability. But they show promise, Tar whispered, his argument failing. Their art, their music, it shows a capacity for great emotion, great depth. Promise is not performance. Calyx cut in sharply, her voice like cracking ice. They have had their chance to mature. Now they will have our guidance. It is a kindness we bestow upon them, a chance to join a civilization greater than they could ever build on their own. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Class 7. A species that had just split the atom. A species still burning refined hydrocarbons to push metal cans into low orbit. In galactic terms, they were barely past the stage of hitting rocks together. They were a historical curiosity, a footnote, nothing more. The vote is called, Valerius announced, his voice leaving no room for further debate. A wave of emerald light swept through the chamber as hundreds of delegates signaled their assent. It was a testament to unified purpose, the inexorable will of the Concord. A few hesitant amber lights flickered in the lower tiers, species too minor to openly defy the Imperium and the Dominion, but whose consciences were troubled by the casual dismissal of a world soul. And then, a single, defiant point of crimson. Tar's refusal. A futile gesture. A spark against the sun. Ignored. Unimportant. Motion carries, Valerius declared. The Cthar Dominion is authorized to dispatch a standard relocation fleet. 12 vessels should be sufficient to ensure compliance. Tar sank back into his seat, his fur bristling with a mixture of fear and shame. Only 12? He whispered to himself, the number a chilling testament to the Concord's breathtaking arrogance. His thoughts, however, were overheard by Calyx's sensitive audio receptors. She found his naivety almost charming. Our scouts have watched them for 6 months, emissary, she transmitted on a private channel, her mental voice dripping with condescension. Their most powerful ships are chemical rockets that can barely reach their own moon. They have no energy shielding, no gravitational control, no meaningful space-based defenses. What could they possibly do against 12 Cthar battlecruisers, each capable of glassing a continent in under an hour? But what if they have hidden strengths? Tar sent back a last, desperate plea for reason. Some species develop unpredictably. Our own records speak of the great deceiver, a species that appeared primitive until, of legends and myths to frighten hatchlings. Calyx cut him off. This is reality, emissary. And in REA, Lighty, the strong and the wise must guide the weak and the foolish. It is the way of the universe. Her thought was so absurdly arrogant it was picked up by telepaths in the chamber, and several of them laughed openly. The sound a mixture of chimes, clicks, and subsonic rumbling. Impossible, Valerius stated with finality, striking the resonating crystal that closed the session. The deep, Pure tone washed over the chamber, signaling the end of the debate and the end of an era for the unsuspecting humans. We have governed this galaxy for 10,000 years. No species jumps from class 7 to a galactic threat without our notice. The Cthar fleet will depart within the cycle. Expected mission time, 6 standard days. As the council members began to disperse, Calyx shared a glance of triumph with Valerius. The Terra system was theirs. The humans would be quietly moved, a footnote in a glorious new chapter of Cthar prosperity. She had no way of knowing that deep in the asteroid belt of that very system, a technician on a cloaked listening post turned to her commander, her face pale in the light of her console. "Ma'am, they're coming. 12 ships. Just like the simulation predicted." The commander, a woman with ice-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, nodded, a grim smile touching her lips. "Good. Let them come." Grand Admiral Thorian stood on the bridge of the Cthar flagship, the Indomitable Will. His scaled hide, a deep, intimidating crimson, seemed to absorb the soft glow of the command deck. He had overseen 100 relocations in his long and decorated career, pacifying the insectoid hordes of Cygnus X-1, glassing the fungal forests of the mycelian sprawl. He was the Concorde's chosen instrument of order, the hammer that forged stability from the chaos of lesser races. This mission was an insult, a milk run, a task for a junior officer, not a Grand Admiral of the Dominion fleet. It felt too easy, and that was the only thing that made him uneasy. "Status report," he commanded, his voice a low, gravelly hiss that promised violence to anyone who disappointed him. His second-in-command, a younger Cthar named Vex, consulted his console with an air of eager subservience. Vex was ambitious, and he knew this easy mission was a perfect opportunity to impress the Grand Admiral and secure a promotion. "All 12 ships reporting green, Grand Admiral. We are 2 hours from the inner system. Long-range scans show the Terra system is completely quiet. A few primitive satellites, a single, small space station in high orbit. All matching scout reports precisely. Nothing of military significance. Any response to our 72-hour relocation notice?" "Negative, sir," Vex replied with a sneer. "Complete radio silence since the broadcast. They are either paralyzed by fear or too primitive to understand the message. We are monitoring their internal communications. It's chaos. Their so-called governments are blaming each other. Their populace is panicking. It's exactly what the psych profiles predicted." Thorian nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the blue marble growing ever larger on the main view screen. A beautiful world. A shame its inhabitants were so unremarkable. The silence was typical. Primitives either panicked and begged for mercy, or they went completely silent and prayed to their non-existent gods. "Sir," the sensor officer, Subcommander Jax, called out from his station. His claws tapped nervously on his console, a constant, irritating rhythm. Jax was a worrier, a technician who trusted his instruments more than he trusted command. It made him a good sensor officer, but an annoying subordinate. "I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the 5th planet, the gas giant." "Unusual how?" Thorian asked, a single eyelid sliding sideways in a flicker of interest. Jax hesitated, rerunning the diagnostic for the 3rd time. "The power output is massive, Grand Admiral. It's fluctuating in a patterned, non-random sequence. It's not a natural pulse, but it doesn't match any known human technology signature. Our database suggests it's likely natural atmospheric phenomena. Magnetospheric storms on gas giants can produce strange energy patterns." Vex scoffed audibly. "The primitives can barely get a satellite to their own moon, Jax. You think they have a power source on Jupiter? It's a storm. A big one. Log it and move on before you embarrass yourself." "But the pattern, sir," Jax insisted, his voice tight. "It's repeating every 3.14159 seconds. It seems intelligently structured." Thorian dismissed it with a wave of his clawed hand. "Pi. An interesting anomaly, but ultimately irrelevant. His fleet's sensor arrays could detect a single lifeform's heartbeat from a light year away. They could read the genetic code of a microbe from high orbit. If there was a genuine threat, they would have seen it. These momentary flickers were ghosts in the machine, distractions from a boring but necessary task. "Continue on course," he ordered, his voice sharp, cutting off any further debate. "All ships, Maintain standard relocation formation. Let's make this quick and clean. I want to be back in Dominion space by the end of the week. Behind him, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. They were young, eager for glory, and utterly confident in their technological superiority. They had no idea that every single ping from their advanced sensor arrays was being intercepted, captured, analyzed, and then a false, clean signal was being sent back to them in its place. A signal that showed them a perfectly empty, perfectly quiet, perfectly primitive solar system. They were flying blind, in a universe they thought they commanded. In the cold, silent darkness of space, objects that looked like communication satellites and debris from old human missions began to slowly turn. Their solar panels angled, not toward the sun, but toward the approaching Kthar fleet, drinking in the faint energy of their drives, confirming their trajectory. Ancient human probes, ones the Concorde had dismissed as orbital junk on their star charts, were powering up systems that drew energy directly from vacuum fluctuations, a source of power the Kthar had theorized for 1,000 years but had never been able to achieve. And deep beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, in a command bunker shielded by 10 kilometers of solid rock and sophisticated, multiphasic cloaking fields, General Eva Rostova stood before a wall of holographic displays. Every Kthar ship was rendered in perfect, real-time detail. Their shield frequencies, their weapon power levels, their crew complements, their command structure, even the life signs of the Grand Admiral himself. She knew everything. "Status report," she said, her voice a quiet, calm contralto that cut through the low hum of the command center. Her tactical officer, Major Kenji Tanaka, replied without looking up from his console, his fingers a blur across the holographic interface. "All platforms are online and armed, General. The Ghost network is holding perfectly. They see an empty, silent system. Their sensors are telling them exactly what we want them to hear. They have no idea we're here." "Perfect," Rostova said, her face a mask of cold professionalism. "Let them get a little closer. Let them pass the orbital line of Mars. We want them deep inside the web before we pull it shut. We want to make sure none of them get away to warn the Concorde." The trap was set. For 50 years, it had been waiting. Now, they just had to wait for the prey to walk into it. Grand Admiral Thorian felt a primal unease as his fleet passed the orbit of the fourth planet, Mars, a red, dusty world dotted with what his sensors identified as small, automated terraforming facilities. All dormant, all quiet, exactly as the scout reports indicated. But everything was exactly as reported. There were no deviations, no unexpected ship movements, no panicked civilian comms chatter. It was sterile, as if he were flying through a simulation, a historical recording. Too quiet. He thought again, the thought nagging at him like a parasite. He had survived 100 battles by trusting his instincts, and his instincts were screaming at him now, a high-pitched siren in the back of his mind. "Sir, we are now passing through the main asteroid belt," the navigator reported, his voice betraying a hint of boredom. Thorian studied the tactical display. Thousands upon thousands of rocks, drifting in their ancient, silent orbits. A few of the larger ones showed signs of primitive human mining operations, all abandoned. He zoomed in on one, Ceres. The scout data said it housed a small, automated processing plant. It was cold and dark, utterly lifeless. Suddenly, his crimson scales tingled, standing on end. An ancient, instinctual warning, buried deep in his species' DNA for millions of years, screamed a single, silent word in his mind. Awa. RD his ancestors had known well, but his generation had forgotten. Predator. "Sir." The absolute, gut-wrenching panic in Subcommander Jax's voice made Thorian spin around, his hand flying to his sidearm. Multiple energy spikes, all through the system. They're everywhere. High-energy contacts appearing everywhere. "What?" Thorian roared, shoving Vex aside to get to the sensor station. The display, once a calm map of empty space, was now a sea of crimson alerts. Dozens, no, hundreds of warning symbols, blooming across the asteroid belt and the outer planets like a deadly rash. They weren't ships. They were weapon emplacements. Emplacements that had been cold and silent a moment ago. "Where did they come from?" he demanded, his voice shaking with a rage born of pure shock. "They weren't there 30 seconds ago." "How?" Before Jax could answer, Space itself exploded into silent, brilliant violence. The first attack came from the asteroids. Not energy weapons. Not plasma. It was something far simpler and far more brutal. Tungsten rods, the size of small office buildings, polished to a mirror sheen, launched from hidden magnetic accelerators concealed within the asteroids. They didn't use propulsion. They were simply thrown at a significant fraction of the speed of light. They slammed into the Kthar fleet like the fist of an angry, vengeful god. The rods didn't explode. They didn't burn. They simply passed through. Energy shields designed to stop the blast from a supernova flickered and died, unable to process the sheer, focused kinetic energy. The rods punched through adamantium-laced hulls, through reactor cores, through crew quarters, through bridges, as if they were made of mist. Thorian watched in abject horror as his third ship, the Righteous Blade, simply came apart. The kinetic slug hit it dead center. A silent flash of vaporized metal. And then the ship, a 2-kilometer-long titan of Kthar engineering, split in two. Metal hull plates the size of city blocks tumbled into the void as the ship's spine snapped, its internal atmosphere erupting in a cloud of frozen, glittering crystals. A silent, beautiful tombstone in the dark. Return fire. Thorian bellowed, his voice cracking. All ships, return fire. But there was nothing to shoot at. The asteroids that had just unleashed hell looked exactly like all the other asteroids. The weapon systems had gone silent, gone cold, hiding their heat signatures among millions of identical pieces of cold, dead space rock. They were ghosts. Sir, massive energy signature. It's the fifth planet. The anomaly Jax warned us about. Thorian's blood, already running cold, turned to ice. He looked at the main view screen. Something huge, something impossibly vast, was moving out from behind the swirling, ancient clouds of Jupiter. It had been hiding in the planet's immense magnetic field, its energy signature masked by the very storm Jax had dismissed as natural phenomena. It was the size of a small moon, but its lines were too clean, too perfect. It was artificial. As it moved into the sunlight, the Admiral saw that it was covered with weapon ports and shield generators of an utterly alien design. It wasn't a ship. It was a mobile fortress. A planet killer. On the side, in stark white letters, was its name, Aegis. The humans had built a mobile battle station and hidden it in their own backyard. How is this possible? Vex stammered, his arrogance shattered, replaced by the pure, mindless terror of a cornered animal. He had wet himself, the acrid scent of his fear filling the bridge. Thorian's answer came in the form of a beam of pure, coherent gravity that reached across millions of kilometers of space. The beam didn't strike his ships. It didn't need to. It bent space-time around them. Ship 7, the Vigilant, and Ship 11, the Harbinger, were caught in the distortion field. Thorian watched, his mind unable to process the sheer physics of it, as the two battlecruisers were twisted, warped like molten glass, and then crushed into two impossibly small, impossibly dense points of matter and light. They vanished from existence with a faint pop of Cherenkov radiation before their crews could even register what was happening. 2,000 souls, gone in an instant. Shields failing on ships 4 and 9, his tactical officer screamed. We're being hit by plasma fire from the moon, sir. Earth's moon is firing on us. Admiral, we muse. Retreat. Jax pleaded, his station sparking from a feedback loop as human electronic warfare systems tore through their firewalls and began rewriting their code. Retreat where? Thorian whispered, his voice a ghost of its former power. He looked at his display and realized with dawning, absolute horror that they were surrounded. Energy signatures were blooming all over the system, a perfectly coordinated, overlapping web of death. Behind them, ahead of them, above and below, satellites that had looked like space debris came to life, revealing themselves as automated plasma cannons, firing in perfect, synchronized volleys, cutting off their escape route. Even Earth's own moon was continuing to transform. Great sections of the lunar surface slid away, revealing massive gun ports that had been hidden for decades beneath meters of regolith and dust. They had turned their entire moon into a stationary Death Star. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a perfectly designed, inescapable kill box. Sir, incoming transmission from Earth. the comms officer reported, his voice trembling so badly he could barely speak. On screen, Thorian managed to say, his throat dry as dust. The face that appeared was human. A woman in a crisp, dark blue military uniform. Her name was Eva Rostova. Her eyes were cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of fear. She looked bored, as if this entire battle was a minor inconvenience. "I am General Eva Rostova of the Terran Defense Coalition," she said calmly, as if discussing the weather. "You have entered our system with hostile intent. You will power down your weapons, transmit your unconditional surrender, and prepare to be boarded." "Impossible," Thorian snarled, a final flicker of defiance rising within him. "Your species is barely Class 7. You cannot possess this technology." General Rostova smiled. It was not a friendly expression. It was the smile of a predator that has patiently waited for its meal to wander into its jaws. "We had excellent teachers, Admiral," she said. "Every probe your Concord sent to study us for the past 50 years was a gift. We didn't just observe them. We captured them. Every piece of your technology that crashed on our worlds was taken apart and understood. We are very fast learners." Another wave of kinetic rods erupted from the asteroid belt. This time, Thorian watched his own ship's shields flicker and die. They weren't overpowered. They were simply turned off. A perfectly modulated jamming frequency had found a backdoor in their operating system and issued a system-wide shutdown command. "You learned to hack our systems?" he asked, the words tasting like ash and bile. "We learned everything," Rostova replied, her voice as sharp as a shard of ice. "Your language, your technology, your tactics, your ship classifications, your fleet deployments, the psychological profiles of your commanders. We have a file on you, Grand Admiral Thorian. We know you prefer aggressive, head-on assaults. We counted on it. Did you really think you could watch us for 50 years without us watching you back?" Thorian's ship, the Indomitable Will, shuddered violently as another kinetic rod grazed its port side, peeling away layers of armor like the skin of a fruit. Half his fleet was gone, not just disabled, but erased from existence. The rest were trapped between a battle moon, a fortress world, and an entire solar system that had become a single, integrated weapon. "Sir, your orders?" Vex pleaded, his voice a high-pitched whine of terror. He had collapsed to the floor, a puddle of reptilian fear. Thorian looked at the tactical display one last time. It was a sea of red. A symphony of death composed just for them. He looked at the human general on his screen. She was still smiling that cold, patient, terrifying smile. She hadn't just outfought him. She had outthought him. She had won this battle 50 years ago. He was just the last one to find out. "The mission is over," he said, his voice heavy with a defeat so total it crushed his soul. "Send a priority, encrypted message to the Concord. Tell them we were wrong about the humans." He paused, taking one last look at the beautiful, deadly blue world on his screen. "Tell them everything was wrong." As his few remaining, crippled ships turned to flee, he heard General Rostova's voice one more time. A final, chilling promise that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his short life. "Give the Concord a message from Earth, Admiral," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Tell them humanity does not accept relocation. Tell them any fleet that enters our system with hostile intent will be destroyed." Her smile widened, and her eyes seemed to burn with a cold, ancient fire. "And tell them, we know where they live."